Hello everyone and welcome to this video, and this is the part of the video where we are talking about different types of career opportunities that you can do, especially during this lockdown period, and how you can benefit from different experience and different knowledges. Today, of course, I have with me Christiane, and she today is going to talk about resume, like different types of resume. To be very honest, I didn't even know this. There are different types of resume. For so many years, I worked in many companies and countries. I just pick up the same resume and have been doing that. And it is a very fascinating conversation to learn that there are so many types of resume and what all things you can do to actually make your point out. So, without any further ado, uh, welcome, Christina.
Thank you, Chandan. Yeah, so making a standout resume uh, takes a little bit of extra work, but I think that work is worthwhile because if we think about the purpose of a resume, the purpose of the resume is to get you to the interview. So if it's not compelling enough to the person who's reading it, you'll be in the no pile rather than a yes pile.
Yeah.
So the first thing that I think of is when you're getting your resume together, you should actually have what I think of as two different resumes. One is your master resume, and that resume has all your information on it in detail so that as you progress in your career, if you ever need to go back to something, you don't have to go through old documents and try to recreate something and you'd forget half of it. It's a good reference place. Then you have what I call a working resume, and that's the resume that's going to be the one that you're currently using to apply for jobs. Now, for some people, if you have talents in a couple different areas, you might actually have even two working resumes, one that mainly targets that one area of competency and another one that has the target for that second area of competency. So you can tell that I'm already encouraging you to tailor your resume to the area that you're focusing on. Once you have that, I thought the next important thing to talk to you about is the structure of the resume. Because in my over 20 years in the staffing industry, and literally I've interviewed probably close to 10,000 people now.
Wow.
Yeah, yeah, and from working with clients and placing thousands of people in jobs, uh, the structure of the resume helps your reader get to the information quickly. So first, of course, at the top, you're going to have your name and contact information. And by the way, you don't have to have your full address. These days, it's fine to have a name, and then contact information is really just email and cell phone number or whatever. Then the next part on your resume is what I would call your overview. Some people call it like your professional summary or whatever, but something brief about who you are and what you specialize in, so that you're framing for the reader how they're going to understand you. Okay, so if let's say you're a developer and you've been developing now for 5 years, so you might say um, a senior Java developer specializing in Spring and Struts and these, having worked in this and this industry, or maybe having worked on this nature of type of projects and whatever that is, but just some kind of summary that helps your reader get that overview of who you are in a nutshell. Then we want your professional experience. Now, some people will say, oh, but I've always been told I should put my education first. No, and I'll explain why. If you already have working experience, that is what is most interesting to an employer. The education comes after your professional work experience so that you're giving them what's most important to them first. And you'll hear that from me a number of times as I talk to you about what's important for good resumes. You want the most important information first. Okay, so we've got our professional experience. After the professional experience, you're going to have your education, and then you're going to have, as an IT professional, you're going to have your overview technical summary. Now, technical information you always want within each of your projects too, because employers want to see what technologies did you use in your job, so that they can go, oh, they used that just in their last job. Great, it's all, the skills are up to date, right? Now, at the end of your resume, there are also a couple other things that may or may not be important. Language skills, you can list those as in, I'm talking, you know, English, French, whatever other language you speak. If language is a requirement for the job, though, you may want to bump that up, even in your overview summary, you know, bilingual French, blah, 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 blah. The other thing is, I know there are people that are probably going to be listening here today that work for the government. So if you have a security clearance, for instance, make it obvious that you have that, so it's easy for people to know that aspect. They don't have to wonder if you're qualified. So that's the overview of the structure of a good resume.
Yeah, that is quite fascinating. So this is the structure of the resume. So we're going to talk about, like, I think you talked about different types of resume, like chronological resume, functional resume.
Sure,
Throw a little bit light on that.
sure. So in my experience, clients prefer a chronological resume over a functional resume. I think it has to do with people liking the order of the chronological resume. So in that kind of a scenario, you're putting your most recent information first and working your way backwards. And again, if you think of what I just said about the most important information first, employers are most curious about what you most recently did. Now, the only reason then for using a functional resume is if you're making a big change in your career path. In that case, what you want to do is really emphasize the skills and the transferable strengths that you have for that employer, because again, we're going on that principle, they care about seeing what they what qualifications you have that match to their job. So with a functional resume, what we're doing is we're summarizing those transferable skills first before we head, I should say, before we outline the other information. So there, often what I recommend to people, we just talked about the structure of the resume. So within the professional experience part of the resume, what I recommend then is you can break it up into two sections. One is related work experience, which is the first one, because that's going to be the most important to that employer. And then the other one could be other work experience that is not as related, because you're now making that transition, or you've just made the transition, you don't have as much experience, right? So that's the essence of it. If you can stay with chronological, most people prefer to read that.
Okay, that's great information to know. Yeah, I think that was a quite information, and I think anybody who is watching this video, they'll definitely be benefiting from this. And thank you so much for your input. And thank you, everyone. Have a good day. Bye.